Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.
So tell us about how you handle those boulevard trees.
We do it really easy. When I first got here, we did the same thing like everybody else does. We'd send a staff person out with a pole, and they would measure all the trees. We would send a notice to the property owner, please trim your boulevard tree. And then after the period of time, we would go back out with the same staff person, measure the trees again. Now they're not cut, so then we would come back, same staff person, and then bring a trimming service, and we would cut those boulevard trees and then assess the cost to the property owners. But we do it a little more efficiently now. We do about a third of the town each year, and we just send a staff person out with the tree trimming crew. We put a notice in the paper saying, hey, we're trimming boulevard trees to 12 feet on the street side, 10 feet on the sidewalk side. If you want them trimmed, trim them on your own. If they're not trimmed, we will trim them for you, and we don't send it bill.
We absorbed the cost. It was not worth the $25 here and $25 there.
Because most of them, you trim off an inch branch or so. It takes the tree trimmer 5 minutes. That's it.
Are you having that issue now?
There's a lively debate between companies as to what direction we should continue to go.
Oh, how do you do it now?
Kind of what you described.
Oh,
The project trim, but they've been through my neighborhood 2 times now.
The city doesn't do it for the citizens.
No,
If they do, they bill you.
They come out with the stick thing,
yeah.
and then you get the notification.
Then they go back and they write a letter, they send it out, and they go back and they check it, and then they go back and then they.
And they give you a
call the
list of
tree.
arborists that, so it's.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I'm good.
It's
Take it all separately.
All right, it's $150 minimum if you don't use their people, and I've had neighbors who have used their people, and they still come back and say not good enough. That, you know, and the time they're still going back and forth, but
But you don't have to use an arborist. I used my handyman. I called my handyman,
but I mean-
and my handyman got on the ladder, and
some people don't have that, you know, a handyman, and like my neighbor who lost her job.
I don't know, but this is a reputable handyman in the community, and he
It's a business person.
it's a business person. Yeah, it's not just I didn't call Jim and he went and.
No, right.
Sorry, that's our rumor.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Certified arborist, all so.
Yeah, I mean, you do it wrong.
Right.
But I mean, like, I just went through this process with our rentals. I had 2 properties and we trimmed them up and they called and then they came back and he called me again and it still wasn't right. And so I said, you wait right there, my guy's on the way because I'm not quite sure which branch we're talking about. Can you just flag it for me? I asked if they could tie a flag or
And did they?
pink spray paint and he said, no, we don't do that. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And so, and then my handyman, my guy went over there that did some work for our properties, and he went over there and met him, and he just sawed down, and we were on our way.
I've
But
asked.
I know it'd be fine. But they were very easy to work with too, because here's the other thing, is they called and they gave me a pretty short deadline. I mean, it was a couple weeks, but we were actually out of the country, and so I said, I'm leaving, I can't get this done in time. They're like, when can you get it done by? And I said, well, I'll call my guy, let me figure this out. And they worked with me, they really did. They weren't just hell or high water, I'm gonna find you for this and do it yourself. You know, they were working with me.
The question I've asked is, okay, you're gonna drive out there, go back,
Yeah, they went 3 times.
go 3 times, wouldn't it be easier just to drive the truck with the stick and have another guy there who's still?
Well,
That's what we figured.
Don't count the front.
well, and my point is, they've been to my area 2 times in the last 5 years. So I said to, I met with Mark Cotter last week, and I heard Don Freeman, I said, I would think by now, if you've covered the city, that the big heavy lifting is done. So now it's just a matter of maintenance, you know, and so that should be, if they've been in my area 2 times, it means they've been through this, unless they're targeting my area.
No,
Once you've cut off those big branches, they're not gonna be growing back real fast, and they took off some big things. And so anyway, yeah, no, you know, so I personally think we should.
Well, and it's different too if they, depending on when they come measure, because they came a little later, and then when I got the notice, and then they measured again, it was a little close, and my branch wasn't as low. I mean, you know, it depends on the leaves, and the leaves really bring the branches down quite a bit when they measured it, and they, you know, it was.
And I ran into the same thing you did, and I bragged about that too, is I got a letter, and I'm very particular about my property, so to get the letter at all, And I go out there and I, for the life of me, can't figure out what the tree is. I can't figure it out. And at my old house, I have 4 or 5 boulevard trees. And I called and, got this, person on the phone, I won't say his name, but anyway, he said, well, you're gonna have to go out and measure it yourself and figure it out. And I went in circles with them, then you end up butchering all of your trees because you don't want to get this big old fine.
And it's still, right?
And you hack them off and they look horrible because you're being very, very careful. Like, okay, I'm gonna get them at least a foot above the line or whatever.
Well, I think, don't we have 15-foot clearance?
Maybe it
I
depends.
thought it was 15.
It might be, but
The street and sidewalk are different.
Depends on the road.
My commentary was, okay, you're driving
Yeah.
by, just put a little ribbon on it or just spray paint on it. I mean,
Spray
that
paint
washes
branch,
off,
yeah.
whatever.
Well, I'm gonna
So-
chop that branch down anyway, so what's the difference if there's spray paint?
Well, and what they said was, well, some people don't really appreciate you doing that to their trees, and I'm going,
But
yeah,
you
but they're not their trees.
Cut it out.
It's the boulevard, so, but anyway, so.
Now,
I
if
don't
it's,
feel
if
pilot,
it's,
so.
if it's a private tree overhanging the street, we give them a notice.
Okay.
If it's on private
Right,
property.
right, yeah.
So
that
we give them a
is-
notice, we're not supposed to go on their property.
And sidewalk as well, public sidewalk,
Yep.
if it's open, sure, but if it's on the private property, it's over.
Yeah, so if it's in the boulevard, it's a city tree. You may have planted it as a property owner, but it's a city tree, and
Yeah.
therefore,
I will just tell you that when I'm talking with citizens that this is in Sioux Falls, it's a very despised program. So if we could find some way of putting a little energy towards helping the people, it would be so greatly appreciated.
now, when we do that, if we're trimming a tree, we take a picture of the tree with the measuring pole and the house. So that when somebody calls up and says, what did you do with what happened to my tree? We can, because my tree was fine.
But you
Well,
give them
here's the pole,
Correct.
there's your house.
But you give them an option to do it themselves.
Yeah, we put a notice in the
Some people
paper.
like that, but some people want to trim their own
We
trees.
put a note, here's the area, we put a map, here's the area of town that we're going to be doing this year. Here,
I think you just answered my question, you don't do the entire city one.
no,
You don't.
about a third.
I think it's just going in circles too.
And this is probably gonna be probably our third go around.
It was several years ago when I came.
Yeah, so
One
we're,
lady was crying.
yeah, so it's much faster now,
It's faster now.
because there's not as much trimming.
Because you got the bulk of it done. And I suggested we could try a pilot program, like we did with the bus passes, just to see, is this gonna break the bank if you went around and took a section and see how much.
Do you know how much they spend on noticing staff time?
Well, that was
That would be,
Yeah.
that would be interesting to know.
They did do it.
This is
Did you
$100,000.
excuse me, or Grady might remember this, did they do a project trim like in 2014, like a presentation where they kind of came through and they just talked about the cost? And maybe it's time to have them back in.
I think it was when I was elected, so it's been in the last 2 years, but I don't really remember the details.
Yeah.
So I recall the pushback, and what I've been told personally is that if they do it this way, where they cut them themselves, that they would have to slow down the trucks and would add more gas, and that would be,
Well, I think
another
there's
$1 million in
liability
operating
too.
costs or something like that. I don't know.
Well, we looked at it, sending a staff person out there to tour that part of the city. We figured between the three inspections, sending the notices, sending the bills, it was about $100 of our staff time to do it. So it's just, and then we hire it done anyway. So
And you don't always collect it either.
yeah, we did.
Oh, did you
Oh,
always?
yeah.
All assessment.
Yeah, if it's paid, it's accessible. But we were sending out bills for $16, $18. Because we just took the bill divided by, how many trees they trimmed and or how many properties they
It was
did.
only $18?
Yeah.
Oh, because we have a minimum of
No, we
150.
didn't. We just took the bill from the tree trimming company, divided it by how many properties they had to trim trees on, and it was,
It wasn't worth
It wasn't
it
worth
on
it.
the bills. So then we refunded it all that year and then we just changed it. It's interesting, isn't it, what people, yeah.
Would that be a public services thing?
There's been a couple of comments over the last few years on the process has been estimated to cost $1 million to set up and do in Sioux Falls. That's the word that's come from different parks.
What does it charge you, what do you guys estimate?
well, we pay about $8,000 a year the tree trimmer. Whatever company we use, it's about $8,000 a year. Now, we've got, in comparison, we've only got about 52 miles of streets.
Yeah,
Right.
So,
Yes, we have, yeah.
you guys have a little bit more.
yeah.
What's our miles of streets? Maybe, you know, I don't know. I mean, $8,000 for 52,000.
And that's for a third of
A
it.
third.
Third, right. And so for $8,000, but just to use that equation into what,
Actually, I thought I heard that number 2 weeks ago.
I don't remember.
$8,000 for 17,000
It's about,
miles.
you know,
$52,000.
we do about 20 miles a street a year.
20 miles of gas.
You know, rough numbers.
Y'all come back now. Cheers.
What kind of morons run this outfit?